Good morning. I am Shelley Ferris. I am standing in the place of Kelly this morning. I am the Assistant Children's Director, so I just wanted to let you know what was happening in our Children and Youth Department today. Our preschool, our schedule was a little bit different on the timing, so we're actually studying about Paul. And our story today is about how Paul's friends helped him escape over the wall from Damascus after his conversion. And we had a little basket big enough for some of the little preschool children to get into. We raised them up and lowered them down, and some of them thought that was pretty fun. I know that in one of our, I think it's the primary group, they actually wrote out the sequence of the crucifixion and resurrection and then put them in order, and they also acted out their memory verses. So every week, I just want to tell you, a lot is happening in our children and youth. And I'll go ahead and say with that, I get to be with the preschool every week, and oh man, I can't tell you. They are such a blessing. They really are. Your children are really a blessing to us, and it's so fun to see them learn and grow in their faith. But one of the main things I'm supposed to tell you about is next week we'll have our children's program. We do this every year at the last day, and I would encourage you to invite those that would like to see your little ones perform to come and listen to Emily at 11:25. But if they're not here at that time, that's okay. They can come on in. She will start around that time, and then the children will perform at 11:40. So we just encourage you to ask those people come and see all the things that they've learned this week. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome to Community Bible Study in Lubbock, Texas. Can you believe this is the next to the last time we're going to study Matthew this year, although you may read Matthew this summer. I hope you do. Some people are organized enough to go through their lessons. I always say that I will, and then I don't. But I hope you do. It's just been wonderful. And I'm so thankful that you're here for the cross, and I hope you'll come for the resurrection, because that's really leaving on a high note next week. This, like I said last week, remember Kelly's granddaughter said, I don't want to see it. And I think that's how we feel about reading about the cross. And really, I avoid that, and so this has been so good for me to have to read it, to have to see it. Why did there have to be a cross? Kelly's granddaughter might have asked that. I think Jill's granddaughter would have asked, why did Jesus have to die? Why did there have to be a cross? And the Bible says that because God created everything and it was good, and because He made us and we were good, we wriggled out of His wonderful plan for our life and all of His provisions for having plenty and enjoying it, having joy. And we have taken over being God. John Stott, I think, says Jesus substituted Himself for us. We substituted ourselves for Him. That our sin is substituting ourselves as God, doing what we want, rebelling, saying, no, I want it this way. This is the way I like it. This is what I eat. This is where I live. This is what I do with my time. And so we didn't pay attention. We walked away, and there had to be a cross, because his righteousness could not lower itself. We want to lower the bar. I say, I forget to read my lesson. so you won't worry that you forget to read your lesson in the summer. God's righteousness stays the same all the time. His perfection is so far above anything we could think about or hope for. And He cannot change. He does not change because of His love and because of His justice, both. And so John Stott, another quote of John Stott says, is that forgiveness is God's profoundest problem. Interesting thought. I never thought of that before. Forgiveness is a problem for God. He had to figure out how He could keep His righteousness up and still bring us up with Him, bring us up to Him. And He did, and it's the cross. That's the way He did it. This one death, this cross death of Jesus, is truly the pivot of history. In Matthew 1:21, Jesus says at the very beginning of our study that Jesus would save us, all of His people, from their sins. We are so used to the cross. I'm wearing one, or you, and we see it, we think about it, we may talk about it, but we just kind of glaze over. At least I'm just talking about myself, I guess. But we're so used to it, we don't see it. So this lesson was so good. Think about that baby that was carried into Egypt for safety. Think about the gentle teacher on the side of the mountain that said, "Blessed are the meek." Think about the tender healer who touched the eyes of the blind man and who didn't think twice about touching a leper, and think about the teacher who thought about his audience and wanted to feed them when they ran out of food. And now He is the innocent one on the cross. Because of envy, the Pharisees were envious, Pilate recognized it, and because of cowardice, Pilate's lack of cowardice, He is dying. He never did anything wrong. He never sinned. And they are killing Him for the threat He made to their power. For an innocent person to die for someone else is always a tremendous earthquaking thing, no matter what. It doesn't happen very often. If you are running out in the middle of the road in London because you looked the wrong way and somebody pushes you over to the curb, you say, "Thank you so much, I could have been dead." If that person just meets you and said, "I love you and I'll show you how much," and just steps out in front of a car and is killed, that's silly, that's stupid, that doesn't make any sense. But Jesus is on the cross, has taken the persecution for us because He does love us, because He is pushing us out of the way of death and hell and judgment. Tim Keller tells a very true story, magnificent story, horrible story, and it's from a book by Ernest Gordon called Life Through the Valley of the Kwai. And Ernest Gordon was a prisoner of war in World War II, and there were, hundreds of men in this prison camp in Thailand that was run by the Japanese, and every day they would go out and dig holes for latrines, holes for landing strips, and then every night when they came in, the guards would count their shovels. And Ernest Gordon says one night the guard who counted their shovels said, "One is missing. Somebody has stolen a shovel and they're going to try to escape with this shovel, and they may take everybody with them. Somebody has to, who stole the shovel?" And he gets his rifle out and he's furious. And everybody says, I didn't do it. They're standing in attention in a line. And he said, all right, I'm demanding. He didn't say this in English. He was just he was shouting, yelling. He took his rifle and aimed it at the first guy in the line. And he said, I'm going to shoot every one of you until somebody confesses. And when he pointed the rifle at the head of the first one, a guy in the middle who was, Gordon says, an Argyle soldier, and he stepped out and he said, I did it. And the guard just went over and beat him to a pulp. He was bleeding, but he was still trying to stand at attention, but he had hit him on the head, hit him everywhere. And he finally just took the butt of his rifle and just bashed him over the head. This is PG-13, I guess. And bashed him over the head, and he sunk to the ground, dead, totally still. And the guard was so furious, he still was furious, even though he'd killed him, he kept beating him up. And the men, after he got his rage out, the men just picked up their friend to take him into camp and bury him. And when they got into camp, the shovels were counted again, and there was not a shovel missing. And Gordon says that changed everybody who was in that group. Their lives were different. When they were free, when they were home, they remembered, this man gave his life so that I could live. He gave his life for me. And that changed every decision they made when they went home. When someone dies for you, and maybe you've had an experience where someone has saved your life, but when someone dies for you, you're different. You make different choices. And of course, with Christ dying for us, we need to think of it as strongly as that story makes you think, because it's true. It's truer than this witness of this book that told about that man dying. The total sacrifice of one person. Max Lucado says that I'm sure he got this from somebody else probably, that there are 332 prophecies in the Old Testament of Jesus' death. And that's pretty phenomenal. And he said, if you are mathematical, and some of you may be, if you're mathematical, the possibilities of that coming together for one life and then having the crucifixion is 840 plus 97 zeros. I don't even know how to say it. But on a page, it's about this big with all those zeros after 840, comma, 97 zeros. That's the amount of possibility that is that 332 prophecies would be fulfilled. That's just phenomenal. We do think about it, but I don't add it up because I'm not a very good adder. But I just think about the prophecies that we know about just today. There had to be a cross. This death was predicted by Jesus in Matthew 16:21. He says, from that time Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders and chief priests and scribes and be killed, and on the third day be raised. In Matthew 17:22, he said again, the Son of Man is about to be delivered into the hands of men. Isn't it amazing that they heard all these things and they saw it happening in front of them and they ran, except for the women. In Matthew 20, Jesus says, we're going to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and the scribes, and they will condemn him to death and deliver him over to the Gentiles to be mocked and flogged and crucified, and he will be raised on the third day. And then Matthew 26, verse number 2, the Son of Man will be delivered up to be crucified. The Passover's coming, Jesus said over and over. He predicted his death, and then the death happened. It was pictured 2,000 years before in Egypt with the darkness and the taking of the first child, so that was the last chance Pharaoh had to let the people go. And he refused it, and the blood alone saved the Israelites. But otherwise, they would be slaves still. And except for Jesus' blood, we would be slaves as well. God sent to death his firstborn to free us from slavery to sin, slavery to the devil. There had to be a cross. And on the cross, we see the darkness. We see we see God leaving the building, God leaving the earth. And then we see the curtain torn, religion torn down in Matthew 27:51 and Hebrews 10, so we can go in boldly. The number of things you had to do to get in, and you never could get into the Holy of Holies, but to get even up to offering a sacrifice or giving a priest your sacrifice, you had to be so clean. It was such a ritual. And I think about us now, 2,000 years later, with a church on every corner, and church services on TV and on our phones and daily devotionals out the kazoo. And I just think we're a little bit in a routine of religion like they were with the Jewish religion. And we are freed by Christ. And we need to read the Crucifixion, I think, to let go of our own expectations for perfectionism in our faith. Does where you sit in church matter? Do you have to tell somebody how many people you've gone to see? How many times you've witnessed? What is our habitual religious thing that has nothing to do with the cross of Christ, has nothing to do with the righteousness of God, has nothing to do with what Jesus came to do to save us from our sin? I find that I forget that. I forget the main thing. There had to be a cross. The earth shook. The rock split. There had to be a cross. The tombs open. Were you surprised about that? After the resurrection, people came out of the graves to witness. That was encouraging that there is a resurrection that happened after Jesus' resurrection. There had to be a cross. The cross is powerful on its own. I'm glad we see crosses. I just don't want us to take them for granted. I just don't want us to forget what they're about. They're very serious. It's very holy, the thought that an innocent man who was the Son of God died for us to be free of sin, completely covered by the blood. N.T. Wright tells a story of he is still a part of the Anglican hierarchy, and he had a friend who was an archbishop in England, and he said 3 teenage boys came in to make their confession, and they were just joking, smoking and joking. They were just making light of it, and the first 2 just made up stuff that was horrible that they hadn't even done. And the third one, the first 2 left, and the third one was kind of left by himself. And he talked to this archbishop and made up some things that he had done that he was sorry for. And the Archbishop said, okay, you've confessed these sins, and now I want you to do something for your repentance. I want you to walk up to the far end of the church. I want you to look at the picture of Jesus hanging on the cross, and I want you to look in his face and say, you did all that for me, and I don't care that much. And I want you to do that 3 times. So the boy went up to the front. He looked at the picture of Jesus and said, you did all that for me, and I don't care that much. And then he said it again. You did all that for me, and I don't care that much. But when it came to the 3rd time, he couldn't say it. He broke down in tears. And the Archbishop who told the story said, the reason I know that story is that I was that young man. There is something about the cross. There is something about Jesus dying there for us, which leaps over all the theoretical discussions, all the possibilities of how we explain it this way or that way, and it grasps us. And when we are grasped by it, he says, somehow we have a sense that what is grasping us is the love of God. And I think that the cross is powerful. And I hope you'll have the courage to look at it again, not just wait till next Easter. Because the cross is really the beginning, not the end. And that's Elizabeth Elliot points more to life than death. And that testimony of the Archbishop goes with that, because Jesus says it is finished. The power of the battle over sin is finished. He has won. And realizing that Christ's amazing love was on that cross for us has a greater tendency, I think, to make us conscious of his love and of our guilt and of our need for him than anything else. As with the cross, Mark Yarborough writes, our darkest hour may be God's finest moment. Don't you know that? Don't you know that it's the moment when, as my sister Marilyn used to say before she found AA, God was the only one who let me go to the very bottom. God was the only one who loved me enough to let me go to the very bottom. And I think for all of us, that's true. In different ways, we all go to the very bottom, and then we see the cross, and then we see Christ. He's drawing us. There's a kid that I'll give it to somebody if you want it, but it's a neat description of a kid in Uganda, which our class prays for the CBS work in Uganda, and his name is Paul, and he had been in prison 7 years for stealing something. And he said, I thought it was the end of my life. I stopped praying. I stopped believing. I'd committed a big sin, and God wouldn't forgive me. But a CBS member came and visited me, and I started studying with them in prison. And it made a difference in my life. It brought me back to Christ. He was at the very bottom. And he said, now I have been freed. I've served my sentence. I've been freed, and my CBS leader gave me a Bible, which he didn't have before. And I'm going back to my village, and I'm going to start a group. A Bible study, begin CBS in my village. He has been to the very bottom. He saw the cross. He took it seriously. And God drew him. God is drawing all of us, isn't he? Do you see it? Do you feel it? Do you feel the breeze of his Spirit drawing you to him, closer to him? I hope you do. I hope you see it in your life circumstances today. I hope you see it even in your going to the very bottom. That cross is for you. The victory is won, but the war goes on Do you notice all, do you ever say, how could God let this happen to me? I've been so good. I go to CBS. How could this happen to me? Do you see Jesus on the cross, the perfect, innocent Son of God on the cross for nothing except human greed and human meanness? Life is still real. We still fight the battle of sin, but it has been, Jesus has won the battle, won the victory. My son-in-law, Jeff, I remember so well. I still love this. But every night he would put his kids to bed and he would make the sign of the cross in every forehead and say, "Peace of Christ be with you." And they would answer, "And with you." And I think, wow, what a memory to grow up having that on your forehead every night when you went to bed. And I think there were early church fathers that used that too, the sign of the cross over everything. And one of them said, I can't remember which, he said, I place the sign of the cross on everything I do. I place the sign of the cross on everything I do. So the peace of Christ be over you today. And me too. Thank you, Lord.